Elsie is somebody that I've known for about 20 years, and I just loved her as soon as I met her. We met through Spirit and Business Global Institute. Elsie is convinced that democratic capitalism is ripe for a systemic leap, one in which a new kind of organization will play a central role.
There has been the growing awareness that life outside of profits has a material impact on profits. And as Jan talked about, the living system is now asserting itself as a material impact on the investment markets. I don't want to be too cynical about this, but that's how they've looked at sustainability for the past 20 years. How sustainable are our profits? And now that the living system, climate crisis, this health crisis, has affected the profitability of companies, you'll see the investment community responding with statements of commitment to environmental, social, and governance risk factors. But still, don't look to them to lead. And don't look at the stock market as any indication of the health of the economy. They will respond to our individual pressure. And with the pain of the pandemic, we have seen those who are at the edge raise their voices for those issues and others that are related to it, such as the grotesque inequality of income, of wealth, of well-being, of access to health, of institutionalized racism, etc. So we're all very keenly in touch with the pain of our shared fate. Now, what will we do about it? You will notice business making knee-jerk responses. And here I'm going to ask Rick to put the first slide up. And my challenge to you and my request of you is that you discern the motivation of corporate pronouncements, of stock market and investor pronouncements like BlackRock, et cetera. Discern the motivation behind it. This is, for the past 40 plus years, been the driving impetus of what we'll call financial fundamentalism or profit primacy. Maximize growth, accumulate, it's a win-lose, exclusive protection, and predation. But at the same time, and can we see the next slide, please? As if they're actually committed to sustainable well-being. We're actually predators posing with a veil of compassion. And that's what sustainable branding has been, essentially. So I ask you to discern, look behind the veil of communications and celebrity branding. We know where that's gotten us. And look behind now to impact. Look at and ask, as you look at your investments, as you look at your portfolios, as you look at where you're putting your support, look behind the numbers that say, we're contributing this to Sustainable Development Goal X. We have these programs. Look what we're doing in the community. Thank you. But what is your impact on the equilibrium of the living system? I'd like to see that metric, please. And I'd also ask you to take another look a little more deeply at this slide. And this illustrates a few points for me. The other massive change that we have the opportunity to encourage now in corporate behavior and in ourselves is for marketing to step away from the generating appetite, push, and consumption, and step away from the deep knowing that it has of our emotional triggers, and turn the mirror and use that sensitivity that our creative class has, so many of which is in marketing and communications. Turn the mirror and become the empathetic voice of humanity and bring that back to management and let management know, this is the pain that's actually out there. What are we doing as a company to address that, apart from impulse purchases, which are becoming more and more addictive online? As marketers, as communications professionals, we have antennae, and we are in many ways creative artists capable of creating the new dream, of contributing to the new dream. But this is who we've actually been. We've created a generation of celebrity brands. I use the word celebrity in quotes. So in terms of the opportunities for action, there's a lot of good news, and we can talk about that in the conversation later. But if there's one thing that you remember, I hope it's this slide, that we're posing as compassionate predators until we do as Jan talked about, which is to look at the entire ecosystem impact of our behaviors and attach metrics to those, metrics of well-being. What does it mean for a human to be educated for their holistic well-being? What are the metrics and conditions of that? How is what we're doing adding to or detracting from that? What are the metrics and conditions of allowing nature to follow its own natural equilibrium without our intervention? What would that look like? And how can we be us with nature, the living system, and each other, rather than I and me? So if you just go to the next slide, Rick, I think we're setting ourselves up for the larger conversation. We are facing, from the depths of the shared fate, where our egos hopefully are somewhat slaughtered enough, where we're ready to find our hearts, as Karen talked about, our communion, our sense of communion with other. And that's other everything. And from there, ask the question, what is your well-being contingent upon, and how can we organize ourselves to empower that? And so in our work, we are working with those whose hearts are already there, whose leaders already, I recognize, by the way, it's enlightened self-interest to have stable societies. That's apart from the fact there's a license to operate for your corporation. But we're working, as we always do, with those who are on the front edge of embracing what the dream is, what success looks like now. And the best way that we can articulate that is a thriving, naturally flowing, dynamic web of life. It's a big challenge. It's bigger than the moonshot. And it's something that can activate and excite the creative in every one of us. And it's also obviously a business opportunity. I think that we have a narrative here that is about to be born, about the opportunity of thriving together in very tangible terms. So it starts with this felt sense. It's got to be, motivation matters. Every study shows that in any change program. So it's about connecting with that communion sense of identity, system identity. And then to make the leap will require skill, will, and resources. So hopefully together here, we're generating will. Jan and other organizations like WWF have skills, and I know that they do a lot of training, and they hold the hands of corporations as corporations build their capacity to make this kind of transition. And in terms of resources, we can talk more about the investment community and what you might be able to do to encourage them. So I think with that, I'll close and look forward to your thoughts.
For each of us, this phrase, you said, you said for us to look behind the veil for corporations and ask, what is your impact on the equilibrium of the living system? It's such a powerful question, such an extraordinary question. And that when we ask that question, it's also recognizing that we are capable of creating the new dream. So it's both the anger or the fierceness that might come in asking that question, the demand that they wake up, right? That the other wake up. But to do so in such a way that is part of creating the new dream. There's something in there that I'm really now stirring inside of me. Do you have anything else you'd say on that?
Well, I'd just like to add, it may seem big when you look at it conceptually, but there are some marvelous, marvelous examples. And I'll just give you one of them. What if in the desire to start a business, you actually started, sorry, I'll hold this up, this might help. What if you actually started with looking at systems, looking at maybe even a natural system, a forest, and saying, my goal is to preserve this forest, and to think, how could business actually do that? And take a look at what Mandy Cabot and her husband Peter have done with silk grass farms in Belize. Now, these are the people who started the company called Dansko, the shoe company, which now has become employee owned. They built it. They said, okay, great. Now we're going to turn it over to the employees. And Mandy has a wonderful story, and I'm putting it in a chapter to a book that I'm working on right now. But you can go to the website. It's Silk Grass Farms. I think it's .com. They started with, how can we preserve the forest? And they're building a business that will throw off not only the resources to preserve the forest, but the education that's going to allow the local economy and the folks in the local community to develop marketable skills, products and services that are organic, that are nourishing. So the notion of looking at life through a kaleidoscopic lens of, this is the lens, I want to do this. How can I do this in such a way that all of these will thrive on their own natural dynamic?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes.